Thank you. Welcome to Stand Out with Energetic Intimacy. If your goal is to make your audience remember you positively, it is helpful if you can develop a good relationship with them. Mark Brown gave us some great advice on how you do that as he spoke about before rapport. Congratulations to the VTM Con Committee. What an enormous project to pull off. At the end of today, I predict everyone involved will turn off their cell phones and sleep for at least 3 days. Now, if I were to ask you, have your presentations ever bombed? No matter what your native language, I am confident you know what I mean. Certainly, I would love to tell you that all my 3,500 live presentations and the hundreds I've delivered virtually have been a wild success. If I told you that, you would think, Patricia, you're lying through your teeth, and you would be right. All your speakers in different ways are giving advice that when you adapt and adopt will increase your likelihood of success more often than not. It might interest you to know that according to a great speaker friend of mine, Doc Blakely, he said there are 3 types of speakers. Those who have bombed, those who will bomb, and those who will bomb again. There is an adage in speaking you may be familiar with. Practice makes perfect. No, it doesn't. Practice makes permanent both our good habits and bad. As you listen to and review the ideas from all your speakers and incorporate those that make sense for your presentations, get in the habit of recording them and reviewing them. You will not improve what you're not aware of. Now, when I was age 30, and there I am at age 30, I had just opened my own very exclusive men's hairstyling salon in the San Francisco financial district. I was traveling nationwide for a hair product company delivering seminars for hairstylists. That's when I joined Cable Car Toastmasters. Little did I know that these humble beginnings would lead to an amazing keynote speaking and now thriving coaching business. You may be wondering, Patricia, there's got to be a big difference between cutting hair and speaking. In 2000, the very popular television TV show 60 Minutes spent 5 days at the National Speakers Association. They interviewed hundreds of speakers. And I knew if I have any chance of not being on the cutting room floor, I needed to speak in a tweet-length quote. Certainly that was before we invented tweets and Twitter. So they asked me the question, there's got to be a big difference between being a hairstylist and a speaker. And perhaps you'd be interested in what I said.
This former hairdresser, like others in the trade, is a born talker.
When I was a hairstylist, I worked on the outside of people's heads. Now, as a motivational speaker, I work on the insides of their heads. There's only half an inch difference.
That line got me on 60 Minutes. That half inch has made me millions of dollars, but not all in the same year. So how do we project energetic intimacy? If I had to summarize it, would be is you need to be yourself. We take our own personalities to the stage. However, be yourself on purpose and on steroids. We need to up our energy. A perfect presentation, and I would say Mark Brown did a wonderful job demonstrating this, needs to sound conversational. But the difference between a conversation and a conversational sounding presentation is the fact that you think about what you want to say in advance, and then you up the energy and you're more dynamic, specific. It's still you. It still sounds conversational. It's just on steroids. If your relationship is with an audience like this, your friend is your webcam. You need to smile and look in your webcam. And what we all have to remind ourselves to do, myself included, is to smile, because we get so concerned. Will the technology work? Will the slides work? Will they be able to hear me? Will the video clips play? That we take this so seriously that we sometimes forget to smile. Now, when your audience is on a large stage, and certainly we are beginning to get back to in-person presentations, and Mark spoke about this yesterday, about looking at every part of the audience. This is what I call piece of the pie eye contact. And even if you don't see your audience, they feel that you are looking at them. Jerry Seinfeld, who's a very popular American comedian, he always says, play to the cheap seats first, in the balcony at the back. And once they know that you know they're there, they will stay with you when you are looking at the people that is a lot easier to see. Mark also talked about the movement on stage. And earlier in my career, I met a choreographer. I said, do you know anything about speaking? He said, no. I said, great. I want to pay you to watch me deliver a 3-hour presentation and tell me what you think from your point of view. Because as we improve our speaking skills and we understand that every presentation really is a performance, it's very helpful if we look at other points of view. And he said, Patricia, you do a marvelous job using the width of the stage. You don't do enough with the depth of the stage. Now, if you look at the image that I'm projecting, you will see I am in the power position in the middle of my stage. Because this was a large audience, obviously I'm projected on IMAG, image magnification. And when you are not right at the edge of the stage, because when we're new speakers, we always want to get close to our audience. This gives you the opportunity for some dramatic effects. You can open your presentation and then take 2 steps forward into your presentation. If you're standing at the edge of the stage, you can't do that. And then perhaps at the conclusion, you're doing your review, your summary, and then you might say, last story, and you take 2 steps forward. These are theatrical effects with a large audience that gives you a certain intimacy with your audience. Now, when with this walking 2 steps forward for dramatic effect, you can't do it 15 times in your presentation. Otherwise, that looks like a technique. Because as Laurence Olivier, the great actor, said, the art is hiding the art. Now, as we study speaking, we understand techniques. But the average audience looks at you and says, I always thought you're a great speaker, but that was amazing. And as you incorporate all the techniques you're learning from your speakers, practice consistently, that's what you will hear. Another way to create intimacy with your audience, no matter if your audience is virtual or in person, large or small, is talk to one person, not an audience. That way, everyone thinks the speaker is talking just to me. Now, there might be times you might say, welcome Toastmasters around the world. However, if you're asking a specific question, you're telling a story, you're telling one person. So what is one way that you can create energetic intimacy with an audience of any size? One morning, I opened my email and it said, Dear Patricia, I am a big fan of yours and I would love to interview you for my blog. And I don't know about you, but I am a short project person. And I was involved with a big project creating my online learning program. And I was doing my very best to not be distracted. And I don't know about you, but when I work on a project that's a lot of work, sometimes I look for distractions. Let's see how many people like my latest photograph on Facebook. I was doing my very best. So I wrote an email. I'm honored. I'm flattered. I would love to be interviewed. However, I'm working on a very big project. Can you contact me in 3 months? And before I hit send, I thought, well, I should check his website. Naturally, I picked up the phone, now that you know how dreadfully shallow I am, and said, what is an Emmy award-winning TV interviewer and game show host doing being my fan? After a 30-minute conversation, he said, Patricia, this is fabulous information. I have at least enough content for 4 blog posts. However, come on, tell me. What is the #1 secret of delivering a powerful, persuasive presentation? And I said, oh, there's no one secret. And then I suddenly realized a brand new Frippicism was about to fall flawlessly from my lips. And I said, although there may not be one secret, if there were, it would be that your subject is of interest to your audience. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I always get my audience interested in my subject? Speak as an audience advocate. Look at your message, whatever it is, from the point of view of the person in the audience. For example, speakers like me, when we are customizing our presentations, personally, I like to be a mystery shopper. I become a customer of the company that I'm speaking for. I interview some of their associates. I say, this is one of my points. Does that resonate with you? Can you give me a specific example? And there is one technique for every presentation, whether it's a Toastmaster presentation or a formal keynote at a large conference. And that is, stay tuned. Work on the principle that everyone is more interested themselves than you, and use more you-focused language than I-focused language. For example, anytime I hear a speaker say, I want to talk about, I think, I don't care what you want to talk about. I signed up to listen to a presentation on sales, or what I would like to do first. Make it you-focused. What you will hear, what you will learn, what you can look forward to. And I consider the word you-focused language as the one-word advantage. For example, a good portion of my work is working with sales teams. And if you think of what is the standard sales presentation, hi, my name is John Smith. I work with the ABC company. We've been in business for 15 years. We have this unique methodology. These are the customers we serve, and we'd love to do business with you. Nobody cares. I train sales professionals to say, congratulations. What is this company or this team proud of? Talk about them first. And then never thank people for their time, because everybody does that. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss how our offering is what you are looking for. You-focused language will serve you well. Let's see what Fripp, Virtual Fripp, says about this.
An important part of being an effective speaker is not magic. It's technique, knowledge, skill, and preparation. This course will provide you techniques for making sure your audience connects with you as a presenter and with your message, the way you meant it. The most important part of this course is to remember it's all about the audience. Yes, I know. You want to be remembered as an intelligent and dynamic presenter. However, if an audience of any size feels you're concerned and interested in them, they will remember you positively.
Now, let us look at you-focused language. You are about to hear some of the you-focused phrases I use them as a guide, and go from there. You can feel confident that when you embrace good presentation skills, you can get promoted. How often have you walked into a room of strangers you genuinely wanted to meet and didn't know what to say? Do you remember a time when you received a standing ovation? In your experience, how have you found the best speakers deliver their presentations? So just use these as a guide. In fact, what I recommend you do is take some of these phrases, and if that was the first line of one of your presentations, what would follow? Use these phrases also as a way to come up with great content. It might interest you to know. If you had met me when? Now that is a way to, when you are telling your own personal story, bring the audience into it. If you had met me when I first came to San Francisco, you would have seen. Think back to when. When you first joined Toastmasters, were you terrified? Now compare that to how you feel now. If I were to ask you, and you're going to hear how I use that line in a minute. Now we have questions, and whenever we see the question marks, this is when I am happy to take any short, specific questions that might have been sent in or that our moderators want to ask. We'll just take a few minutes. Do we have any questions?
We do, Patricia. So I'll start with the first one. Does you-focused language work the same for writing?
Absolutely. In fact, I recommend you write, certainly email, we communicate a lot. I'll write down what I want to say, and then I will go back and say, rather than I am sending you the proposal, I will change it to attached, you will find the proposal you requested. So write down what you want to say and then go back and look, because I want them to know, and it's a subtle way to prove I have your best interest at heart.
Thank you. And another question, how can you make eye contact with large audiences?
Well, very much. If you look out, and sometimes the lights are such that you can't see the audience. That is a horrible experience because we all feed off the audience. So I would say, look at first the center part, maybe the 8th row, and make eye contact with one person and talk to them. Look at different parts of the audience. If it's a small enough audience, you can see them, but really look at their eyes. Remember, if there's a balcony or people at the back, look in the direction and deliver a thought, an idea, or a phrase to that person. Now, if you're in a boardroom, and often we're in board meetings with important executives or teams or our team and our manager, you might deliver the first line looking at the most important person in the room. However, make sure everybody has a thought, an idea, or a phrase as you're looking around, because nobody is there if they weren't meant to be there. They might not be decision makers, they're influencers. So whether it's small or large, don't scan the audience, don't look above their heads, and certainly don't imagine them naked, which was old-fashioned advice. That would be very distracting and I think very disrespectful. Now, when you are on IMAG, you notice when I showed the image of me on stage, when you're on IMAG, image magnification, that is rather like acting in a movie compared to being on stage. Because, and I know it's human nature, I sit in an audience right in front of the speaker. I'll look at them and then I look at the IMAG. And they're right in front of me. Why? Because it's larger than life, it's showbiz. And every actor who started on stage, whether it's Richard Burton or Jack Lemmon, when they go to movies, it's very off-putting. Because with a large stage with no IMAG, you're larger than life. Well, when you are in a movie, it's more minimalization. It's the directors will always say, be natural, do nothing, that's right. So if you have a large audience, you might move more across the stage, still making eye contact with the audience. When you get to your punchline, stand still. When you're on IMAG and you're larger than life, you can't move as much. Otherwise, and I've seen executives think they're being dynamic, walking back and forth, back and forth. Watching that on IMAG, you make your audience dizzy.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I think we can take the other questions in the breakout room after.
Okay, good. And we'll have one more time. We can certainly take more questions a little later. So let's go to the next way you can create energetic intimacy with our audience. And that is to open your presentation with impact. So let us go and see what I say about openings in Fripp Virtual Training.
Welcome to You Have Choices, Options of Openings, the Techniques. As you soon will come to discover, our subtitle is How to Open Your Presentation with Impact. At the beginning of a speech, presentation, seminar, client meeting, report to senior management, sales presentation, or any manner of presentation you deliver, you need to arouse interest in the subject. After all, we stand in the rain to see a movie. Would you stand in the rain to listen to your presentation?
And I don't want you to think that I believe people would stand in the rain for my presentations. However, what we always want to do is see how we can get people immediately excited with our message. And let's remember, the purpose of the opening of your presentation is to arouse interest in your subject. Let's look at some of your options of openings for your presentation with a question. There are a couple of types of questions. There is the question that I like that is rhetorical. If I were to ask you, in other words, I'm not looking for reply. If I were to ask you, is 2021 the year you doubled the quality of your presentations? Perhaps you'd say yes. Perhaps you'd say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, I would love it to be. Can you tell me how? Well, congratulations, you're at the right place and at the right time. In the next 45 minutes, you will learn 4 specific ways. So you see a rhetorical question based on your subject, and then yes, no, and most likely it will be. And then you notice I put my name on. Most likely you would say, Patricia, one of the biggest challenges all speakers have is people don't remember our names. I find ways to put my name in my presentation in the stories to increase the likelihood they would remember me. Another way is an interesting statistic and little known fact. That is, well, these are all favorites of mine. I promise you, you probably in many of your presentations, especially if they're more technical or they're training, or if you've well researched a subject, there is an interesting statistic or little known fact within it. Bring it up to the beginning of your presentation and add in emotion. By that I mean, it might interest you to know that according to the Wall Street Journal, executives who can speak without notes earn 72% more than those who can't. It might surprise you to know. Now, what would you fill in? It might surprise you to know that there is more garbage in your city than you could fill in 16 city blocks. Or it might shock you to know that 80% of your employees are disengaged. So you see, you add an emotion to the statistic. Then, of course, we always have a story or example. And we've heard a lot yesterday. Mark delivered great stories. We heard from Sean techniques that go behind stories. And of course, I will give you my point of view on stories. And one way you can get into your story or connect to your audience is to transport them. Now, there are 2 ways to transport your audience. Into the future, using the word imagine. And then paint a scene of what could happen if they take the advice in your presentation, and then you say, will that future be a reality? It depends on the actions you take. And then, of course, you can take them to the past. Let's go back to, if you had met me when? Do you remember a time when you were a child? So this is transport your audience. Great stories sell our ideas. They sell our point of view. They sell our connection to the audience when the audience perhaps hears your story that's similar to them. And I agree with Sean, it's not only how good your story is, it's always in the telling. Now, part of my personal discipline in learning to become a better speaker was attending at least 10 different screenwriting classes. Now, I promise you I have no talent or patience to be a screenwriter. However, you have to admit, Hollywood knows how to tell a good story. And if we can incorporate some Hollywood techniques in our presentations, they'll be better. One of the great teachers I studied with, one of the best known, Robert McKee, He said stories are the creative conversion of life itself into a powerful, clearer, and more meaningful experience. Isn't that profound? That's true if a story's in a movie and a story that a speaker might tell. And as you heard from Mark yesterday, these do not have to be earth-shattering stories. They are real life, dramatized. And what I would suggest is that what we often do, we attribute meaning when there normally isn't any. We live our lives, we don't think that much about what happens in an average day. I would challenge you, as Mark said, look at the photos in your phone and think of what story, what situation does that remind you of? Well, let's see what Fripp Virtual VT says about stories.
How often have you sat in an audience and been mesmerized by a speaker? Was it their compelling content? Were their stories scintillating? Do they have the ability to reach out and grab you in a way you thought, wow, the speaker is talking just to me? Be honest. How many life-changing, career-building, or awe-inspiring presentations have you heard? Have you ever been that speaker? What would it mean to you and your career if you had that ability? I guarantee if you've heard a good speech, sermon, or business presentation that you enjoyed and remembered, at least one reason that made it memorable was the stories. Everybody loves a good story, and that is part of their power. No matter what our culture, we grow up feeling that hearing a story is somehow a reward. Stories are how we learn values and our family's legacy. When we're in school, stories make history come alive. In business, we quickly discover that stories help us explain complex issues and are the best way to connect to co-workers, customers, and audiences of all sizes and makeup. Wise leaders, managers, sales professionals, professional speakers, consultants, trainers, in fact, anybody with ambition who wants to make a difference will do well to develop an arsenal of great stories. These stories will provide clear, dramatic examples. No matter what position or level you find yourself, good stories help differentiate you from your competition. Good stories that are interesting, memorable, and illustrate your message can inspire and motivate, train and teach, convince and persuade. When an audience of 1 or 1,000 listens to your stories, they must find them interesting, have an emotional connection, and find the lesson to be learned from them. It has to be obvious how the story ties to the point you are making at that time in your presentation.
Stories are about people, and we like to hear what they say. Now, Mark Brown, Darren LaCroix, and I, in all our classes and coaching and presentations, we always talk about don't report on the dialogue, deliver the dialogue. For example, when I was working with one of my executive coaching clients, he was doing superbly well. We were developing his stories. He was dynamic. And then he began talking about corporate citizenship. And I realized that this was a subject he was very passionate about. And it was at a point which I would consider, if this was the movie, was the second act climax. This had to be good. And it was a little flat. And I don't know about you, but I was not about to tell one of the most brilliant executives I'd ever met, your speech is getting boring. So instead, I asked him this question. How do you explain corporate citizenship to your children? And he said, it was the day after Christmas, and I sat both my children down and said, you are very lucky children because you have generous parents and even more generous grandparents. And perhaps you would like to give us back one of your gift certificates or one of your presents, and we'll take the money and give to children who aren't lucky enough to have homes. And Bernard said, I was so proud of my 14-year-old son. He said, Papa, how much should I give? Because I could give you all of my pocket money, all of my savings, and all of my Christmas presents, and it wouldn't be enough to make a difference. What do I give? And Bernard said, I told him, oh, you never give it all. You just give enough that it hurts a little. That is a simple story that takes less than 1 minute to tell. If you had it transcribed, most of it is in quotation marks, and I believe it has a powerful message. And I think about it every time I write a check or send a contribution to my favorite charities. I remember Bernard and add another $50. So with that, if we have any short questions, I will take them.
We do, Patricia. Can anyone become a great speaker?
Yes, they can, if they are disciplined. And I would say shorten the learning curve by learning from somebody who has more experience than you.
Thank you. Are your video clips from Fripp VT?
Yes, they are.
So that's
FrippVT.com, yes.
excellent. I was going to ask, where is the best place to find stories for presentations?
A once upon a time technique. You go to the beginning of your life and you make a timeline. And every executive, every speaker I work with, I always say, where were you born? What did your parents do? What did they tell you that helped you develop into the person you now are? I always start at the beginning, and then you look at who influenced. What were the dramatic moments? What were your realizations? When did you fail? When were you a great success? Who have you learned from? Do a timeline in your life, and you might want to get a couple of pals around and do this with them.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. These are all for the questions for now.
All right, perfect. So let's move along. I know we are getting close to have me drag off. However, I am very famous for a phrase, specificity builds credibility. If you want to develop a great relationship with your audience, be respectful of them and be understood. For example, we are wordsmiths. Look at the quality of your words, and do not use the word stuff when you're talking about your products, your services, your ideas. Stuff is rubbish and debris. And I don't know about other cultures, but I always say in America, only use the word stuff when you're talking about your turkey at Christmas or Thanksgiving. My most frequently asked question of all my clients is, if it weren't a thing, what would it be? In conversations with no agenda, obviously you're more likely to be non-specific. The way you improve your formal presentations is to improve your casual conversations. The question I ask all my clients, if it weren't a thing, what would it be? For example, one of my brilliant engineers, as part of his presentation, said, there are two things people love about. I said, if they weren't things, what would they be? He said, innovative upgrades. I said, there are billions of people in the world. What people love your innovative upgrades? He said, systems administrators. Can you see the difference in the quality of specific words? Especially at that conference, they had customers from 71 countries. English was not their first language. If it's not fruit, it's not a bunch. Except perhaps if it's a vegetable. You don't get a bunch of ideas. And you also, if you can't weigh it, it's not tons. You are not going to go to a Toastmaster group and meet tons of interesting people. No. Be specific. If it's not a thing, what is it? If it's not fruit, it's not a bunch. If you can't weigh it, it's not tons. Again, you do not believe you are doing this. You don't realize unless you record. Then, if you find you have sloppy language, ask your friends and family to help you. They will not criticize you without your permission. So if you are serious about your presentations, remember again, practice does not make perfect, it makes permanent. All learning is repetition and reinforcement. And if you would like some ideas from Patricia Fripp, you have video clips and special handouts at fripp.com/handouts. This is, you will find opening lines, the techniques and opening lines that you can use to create new content, speech diagrams, all for you. fripp.com/handouts. Certainly, if you would like to send me a specific email, pfripp@fripp.com, you might want to put VTMCon at the top of the email and short specific questions. If you would like to take all my presentation secrets, certainly Fripp VT is a very cost-effective way to benefit from my years of experience. And anyone on our audience, if you would like to invest, you can take a trial, use Fripp as a coupon code to save 20%. And when you summarize, when you have you-focused language, you speak as an audience advocate, you tell great stories, you open with impact, you use specific language, and you rehearse. Rehearsal is the work, performance is the relaxation. And I remember back to when my audience was one behind a hairstyling chair. And whether it's 1 or 1,000, take advantage of the opportunity. I used to say to my hairstyling clients, what made you the best salesperson in your company? What made your company, what did you do to it that a big company wanted to pay you billions of dollars? I used being a hairstylist and my relationships as part of my education on business. I learned so many stories which I still use in my presentations from my clients decades ago. All learning requires repetition and reinforcement. Your audience will forgive you anything except being boring. As nitpicky as I am, it's not about being perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's about being personable. And I certainly look forward to seeing you in the breakout rooms. And I hope you will remember me. However, Remember what Fripp stands for. Frequently reinforce ideas that are productive and profitable. I hear your applause.